Hello, everybody. I hope you guys are having a great day and welcome to one of our last little live deck brews here on the channel before we actually switch to doing these literally live. I really want to start live streaming pretty soon and we'll be doing a lot of these live deck brews, but for now we're sticking with it on the channel. So welcome to this Slicer Hired Muscle kitchen table deck. So in my last video, we had kind of the concept of kitchen table. All of these cards I really just had lying around or already on my, you can call it kitchen table, but really it's just on my desk that I have, as well as the backdrop that I have here behind me that just has a lot of cards and a ton of cards just kind of lying around. So I put these all together and we're going to be live brewing this today. I'm going to go over my thoughts of why I'm adding a lot of these cards into the actual mix. And yeah, at the end of this video, we will have a fully completed list that you can build yourself. So as always, we're going to start with what do we want to do with Slicer? Well, Slicer is already kind of his own engine. He's just going to be on the battlefield being a nuisance to every single one of our players. So some of the strengths that he has is he deals a lot of damage, and all of it is commander damage. He's attacking every single turn rotation, so we can get a lot of payoffs from dealing combat damage or attacking that can happen over and over and over again. There's a couple cards in here that are able to do that are equipments that care about attacking or dealing combat damage. We're also susceptible to other aggro decks just kind of focusing down us because we are going to be pretty open. There's not a lot of other creatures in this list that are going to help us block. So the goal is to make Slicer deal as much damage as possible. So we're ending the game in about 3 turn rotations when he gets out. He might get taken care of, but he's got 2 different modes. The more that meets the eye is going to be something that's possible. You'll cast him first for 5 mana, deal a ton of damage, and then you'll cast him another time for 5 mana with his backside. That is a 3/2 with first strike still, so you're a little bit protected that way. But, it's a fun list. A little bit of weaknesses is the fact that, yes, we can get aggro down, so because of that, we actually run a lot more board wipes, a lot more interaction that can get rid of some of these creatures, and of course, this interaction suite's not going to be the best just because this is all kitchen table stuff. So this is all stuff I just had lying around. So some of the interaction is pretty lackluster, maybe only dealing like 2 damage or, instead of lightning bolt, I have lightning strike, right? So we're taking 1 more mana to do some of these things. And of course, what we're going to start out with is the land base. Now the land base, it's kind of all over the place. We obviously have stuff like Rogue's Passage. Oh gosh, if I could only spell. So we've got stuff like Rogue's Passage is going to help us, but we also have, Strip Mine. There's going to be some things out there that we just want to get rid of, and luckily I had one of those just kind of lying around. We have Myriad Landscape. Sometimes we're going to get, a little bit stalled out, right? So this is definitely a good turn 1 play. If you get it later, it's not amazing, but it's still at least a colorless mana, and you can go get 2 more mountains. So it will take a while, and honestly, I don't really like this land. I might take it out for a mountain one of these days, but until then, it's here. We also have Homeward Path, which is good. Sometimes Slicer's going to be in a position that we don't really want him in, where he's either going to get blocked by a 10/10 or something like that's going to happen. So we want to be able to at least get control of him and make sure that he's going in the direction that we want him to. Yes, it's going to take us away from damage, but for the most part, having control of what he's doing versus our opponents having control of him is always going to be better. And of course, we'll just add 30 mountains. 30 mountains total. So this makes total of 35 in the main deck so far. Cool. So now, what we're looking to do is we want to be able to cast Slicer pretty often and be able to pay for these equip costs and equipment in general. So we're going to be making a lot of mana. So first thing we've got is the kind of the standards, right? We've got Soul Ring. We've got Arcane Signet. Oh my goodness. One thing about me is that I will never get better at typing. We actually got a Worn Power Stone. We actually have another one. We've got Fractured Power Stone. That one's definitely not very good. but it's something. We also have prismatic lens. Anything that can make us some mana. We only need colorless mana, really, so it's not super important, right? Most of these are equip costs, so having colorless mana is always good, especially just for a 2 mana rate is pretty good. We also have some things in here that are going to make us treasures that we'll go over really quick after we're done putting just the standard kind of mana rocks. We also have Star Compass. You know, this is basically Fire Diamond. Speaking of Fire Diamond, let's add that in here because that is also in the list. You know, going to make some red mana, obviously. We also, similar to Myriad Landscape, we've got Wayfarer's Bauble. This is going to be great. It's a great turn 1, turn 2 play. Into, you know, turn 3, you're going to have 4 lands. You can cast maybe 2 equipment cards, and you're ready for when Slicer's about to come out. We also have Ruby Medallion, which is just going to lower the cost of literally everything we play in this list. So that is pretty good. So for mana rocks, that's all we have, right? And that's already quite a lot. We've got, you know, 11-ish mana rocks. If you want to count Wayfarer's Bauble, technically we only have 10, right? But then we need other ways of making mana. So obviously there's going to be some equipments that we're going to love, right? So there's Prying Blade. This is basically just going to make us a ton of treasures as we attack. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, I create a treasure token. There's another one. There is Gold Vein Pick. Does the exact same thing. And of course we've got Sticky Fingers, which is going to not only get us some treasures as well for only 1 mana and no equip cost, it's also going to draw us a card when Slicer inevitably dies. We also have Sword of the Amnest, which is great. This is ramp, and because it says on attack, similar with all these things, right? It says attack or combat damage. We're going to be getting a lot because he's attacking every single turn. So we'll attack, then our opponents will attack, then the next opponent, then the next opponent, and then we're going to attack again. So Sword of the Amethyst is basically a land tax, but way better because you're getting 3 lands, just like land tax, but these are going onto the battlefield directly. So it's actually way better than land tax in mono red of all things. And of course we have one more. You know, there's nothing wrong with a Captain Lannery Storm, which can immediately for 3 mana just come out and make us a treasure token. And of course in the late game, if we ever get there, we've got Mana Geyser, because let's say, you know, it's turn 5 or turn 6 and our Slicer's dead. They've taken him out and somebody's fully tapped out because they had to deal with Slicer. Well, we've got Mana Geyser. We can just put Slicer right back onto the battlefield. So that is it for mana. We've got quite a bit of cards doing that, right? 15 plus 2. It's about 17 sources of just straight gas and straight mana. That's so we can always make sure that we're casting Slicer and we're able to pay for all of our equipments and be able to make sure that we can cast him and our equipments and attach these equipments and do everything like that. Next up, what we have is we have our interaction suite. So in most cases, we have some forms of damage. We have some forms of control. And yeah, we're just going to get straight into it. So first, what I've got is all these board wipes. We actually have quite a bit of board wipes as I'm just sorting the cards here. So start off, Slicer has 3 HP. He's got 4, sorry. He's got 4. So Anger of the Gods is actually a really great card to add into this. It's going to deal 3 damage to every single creature, and we don't need to worry about that. Same with here, we've got Earthquake for 4 mana. You can do the same exact thing. It's always great. Same with Molten Disaster, same thing. You know, this one's going to be 5 mana if you want to do that, but, you know, it's still good. And, you know, this Anger of the Gods is each creature, but for 1 more mana, you can do that for each creature without flying and each player. Same thing with Molten Disaster. And if you kick Molten Disaster, it cannot be countered, can't be interacted with at all. We then have Mizium Mortars. This is great. You know, this deals 4 damage, but you're doing it to a creature that you don't control, so that's great. We also have Blasphemous Act. This one's just a great card. I mean, for potentially 1 mana, we can clear the entire board, then bring out Slicer for the other 6 mana or 5 mana that we have. And it's great. Chain Reaction does the same exact thing for 4 mana, but it's another great board wipe because the more they have, the more it does. We then have a braid. This can get rid of some artifacts that might limit us in attacking. That's always great. And of course we can deal damage to a creature that might be a good blocker. Maybe it's got death touch or something. We've got Pyroclasm, which is another just kind of small little board wipe. We're going to deal this to every single creature. That's great. And yeah, 1 second. We've also got Shock. Shock is great. 2 damage to any creature. This is great to get rid of blockers. We've got Smash to Dust. This is the best one to get rid of blockers because we're doing this to every single one creature. They're just going to be gone because we've got Smash to Dust. That's going to kill all of them. Or of course we can get rid of a artifact. Then we've got Lightning Strike. Again, I don't have a lightning bolt just kind of, you know, sitting around. So, sadly, even though it's you know, it's really cheap, I just don't have it. I think it's in one of my other decks. We've got Volcanic Spite, sorry. Now this one's pretty cool, right? You're going to be able to, you know, cantrip on top of doing this. Now it's not necessarily a cantrip because you are getting rid of 2 cards for 1, so it's not that good, but you know, it's decent. It's not terrible. And then of course, luckily, we have Untimely Malfunction. This one's great. I mean, it's a 2-mana deflecting swat or destroy target artifact, or you know, they can make sure that we can't block. This is just going to be great for something like Slicer. You're not really going to be able to do anything against that interaction. Now, next up, we have a little bit of like still interaction, but it's more of like Staxy and Control-y. We can use our other opponent's creatures to our advantage. So we've got Disrupt Decorum. This one's great. We can make sure that we're not getting attacked by our opponents because we're very open in this deck. We only have, you know, a few creatures out there, so we don't want to be attacked by our other opponents, so we're going to do that. We've also got Hate Mirage. This one's actually pretty decent. I mean, we're stealing some creatures. We're creating a token copy of these creatures, and we're able to attack. So if our opponents have a 10/10, we're going to be swinging at them with some 10/10s and making sure that they block. Maybe we can trade with their 10/10s. Who really knows? We've got Shiny Impetus. This one's going to be great, and honestly can go on Slicer as well. Slicer's already goated, so giving it to a player, you know, it's going to have 2/2, and you're going to be making treasures. It's basically Sticky Fingers, but only on attack and giving it 2/2. So it's pretty good, but you can also use it to control your opponents. And of course, we have a game winner in Insurrection, which is 8 mana sorcery. That's going to take every single, where is it? It's going to take every single one of their creatures, and it's just going to help us, you know, win the game. Win the game. That's what we're looking to do. So we now have the first, I guess the next category, which is dealing damage, right? We want to deal a lot of damage to our opponents. And this comes in the form of equipment as well as other creatures that can help us. So the first one we have is Two-Handed Axe. This is also going to be a combat trick. Sorry, I forgot what it's called. Combat trick. You can double its power until end of turn, or you give it double strike. So it's not really good, but if you ever have to cast the backside of Slicer, you can do that and then, you know, hit them with the Sweeping Cleave. The only thing that really doesn't make sense about that is that why would you pay 5 mana to do this? Who knows, right? But it might come in handy. It usually won't. You're usually just going to cast the normal side and make sure that it doubles its power until the end of turn, which is really, really nice. Now we have Tarian Soul Cleaver. We make actually quite a bit of treasures by doing this, so this will make it bigger, as well as it's going to be attacking every turn and probably killing some creatures. So if it has Vigilance, that's all right. I mean, it's going to be attacking all the time anyways, but you're killing creatures, which makes Tarian Soul Cleaver bigger over and over and over again. We've got some utility in Magnetic Theft. Now this is just going to be able to, you know, let's say we play a equipment that takes 4 to equip. Instead, we play this and we play Magnetic Theft, and we just get to attach it, which is really awesome. We then have some great assistance in Masterwork of Ingenuity. Basically, we just get to copy any of our amazing equipment that we have. Similar to Magnetic Theft, we have Brass Squire. Now, the reason I put these in the damage category instead of like a utility or value category is simply because it's going to ramp us on our damage, right? We're going to play something that gives us a lot of damage, like a Tarian Soul Cleaver or like a two-handed axe, right? And then we can immediately copy it, or we can immediately like copy it here, or we can equip it here, right? It's always going to be good for us to have these things. So, and speaking of high equip costs, we have Hero's Blade. Now, if we don't already have Hero's Blade on the battlefield, it's not going to auto attach. It does that on its own. It's going to attach as soon as we get Slicer out. But if we get this after Slicer is already out, that's when Magnetic Theft and Brass's Squire is always going to be great, because, I mean, 3-2, it makes it a 6-6, and you're dealing double, so you're 12. You know, if you're dealing 12 damage or rotation, they have 2 rotations before they're all dead. So it's good to keep that in mind when looking at these equipments. Next, we have Blade of the Blood Chief. Yeah, we're not a vampire, but it's still a Tarian Soul Cleaver on our commander, which means every time he kills something, he's going to get bigger and bigger, and he's attacking every single turn. If you're attacking every single turn, a lot of these equipments get so much better because you're just dealing so much damage. Next, we have Inquisitor's Flail. This one's great. It's a little risky, right? But you're dealing double damage and you're taking double damage. The thing is, though, is that you have first strike. So now you're dealing 6 on the first strike. You're killing most things that way. So you don't even take the damage because the creature that you attacked is already gone. So it's pretty good if you ask me. We now have O Naginata. I think that's how you pronounce it. You know, we can immediately attach this. It gets 3/3, or it gets 3 + 0. Again, we're going to 6. Everyone's on a 2-turn clock, right? If you look at any of these, we're dealing double damage, which means we're at 6. We're dealing double damage, which means we're at 6. We got to kill just a few creatures, and then we're at 6, right? Most of these things, we're getting Slicer to the point where he's dealing 6 damage each attack. He's got double strike, so he's going to be dealing 12, right? And that's where we really enjoy these equipments, because everyone's on a turn 2 clock, right? Really, you can get it to 11 as well, but again, 11 is not a multiple of 2. So it's pretty hard to get there, right? You're either going to be at 5 or you're going to be at 6. If you're at 5, you're only dealing 20 damage. If you're at 6, you're dealing 24 damage, which means everyone's on a 2-turn clock, which actually means about a 1.5 rotation, because you're dealing damage every single turn. It's not like it's 6. It's just every single time. So someone's taking 12, and then the next time they're attacking and they're dealing 12 to somebody, then they're dealing 12 to somebody, and then you're dealing 12 to somebody, and it's basically 1.5 rotations, because you start with 12. Anyways, I don't want to get too much into it, but getting to 6 power with Slicer is probably the most important thing. So if you can do that, you're going to be in a great spot. And speaking of doubling our power or our damage output, we're going to have Gratuitous Violence. Yet another enchantment, but guess what? We're doubling the damage, so we only need one of these. And again, we're dealing 6 every single time, right? Which means that we're dealing 12 because we have double strike. So it's just really, really great. Next, another one is Kedis, Emberclaw Familiar. One of our very, very few creatures that we actually have in this deck. It's pretty great because now everyone is getting this work. They're all taking 12 every single time they swing, which is exactly what we want. And last, for our damage, we have Komainu Battle Armor. Look, I'm not one that's good at pronunciation, okay? So please forgive me. One thing that's great about this is that we get to goad other players. So not only is it a lot of damage and evasion, it is also control at the same time. So really, really great inclusion into this deck. Now, we're 81 cards in. So you might be thinking, wow, this is a lot of gas. Like, we're just going straight at it and we're doing a lot of damage, but we're kind of vulnerable, aren't we? Yes, we are. So we're going to talk about our protections. So we got Thran Power Suit. This is going to give us Ward 2. Really fun. And it's going to basically give us an All That Glitters kind of effect, but for equipment. So 1/1 for each aura and equipment attached to it, which is really great. I mean, this is going to get to the point where If you just have 3 auras like Sticky Fingers, a Thran Power Stone, and let's say like a Prying Blade, right? You're making a ton of treasures. You're getting +3/+3, which is exactly what we're looking for. And you have Ward 2 on top of that. So ton of mana that you can then play Gratuitous Violence, or you can play maybe Insurrection. Like if you have one of these treasures, right? Let's say you already have 4 lands and a mana rock. You cast Slicer, and you got Sticky Fingers attached to Slicer, okay? So maybe you got 6 mana. I don't know. It's not attached to Slicer. You then get 1 treasure on your turn, 1 treasure on opponents, 1 treasure on opponents, 1 treasure on opponents. You're untapping on your turn with roughly 8 mana, if not more than 8 mana because of all the treasure creation. You then cast Insurrection. You swing out. Nobody has any blockers because you control every single creature and you kill at least 1 player. And then you got 2 players left and you're hitting them in the face. Isn't that fun? I think it's fun. And then, of course, because you're making so much mana also after that, you can then Mizium Mortars. Now nobody has any creatures and there's only a Slicer on the board and you just hit him in the face. I'll go into a little bit of more detail right now, but before I do that, I want you guys to know that the secret word for today is tacos, right? We love talking about food. We love having foods as the secret word, and today's word is tacos. So if you've gotten to this point in the video, please go down and comment something very creative and slip in the word taco. I will like that comment and we'll both know that you watched to this point in the video. If you have watched this point in the video, please feel free to like and subscribe. It really helps out the channel. Also, if you're enjoying deck brews like this, feel free to check out my Patreon. And for only $5, you can actually recommend a deck brew that we do on this channel. And when I start live streaming, we'll be doing them all the time, pretty much every single day. So just to let you know, the word is taco. Let's get back into it. Okay, so we need more protection, right? Swift Foot Boots. Super great. The great thing about this deck is that we're basically just trying to get to Slicer to be 6 damage, and we're trying to control the rest of the game, which is why we have so much interaction and removal. So it's pretty great. Right now we're working on our evasion suite, so something like Vorax is really great. You get trample, and you can only be blocked by 1 creature, so they're going to have something that's really big, otherwise they're going to die. Another bit of protection / evasion / control is Urbas the Hidden. Everything's going to enter tapped, right? Isn't that great? We have haste. We don't really care about that. Slice already has haste. But your opponent's creatures enter tapped, which means it's hard for them. They have to wait 1 turn before they get a blocker, but they're already on a 2-turn clock, so it's already really hard for them in the first place to even get blockers, and when they come in tapped, it's just so difficult, and it's really, really backbreaking. Next, we have Whisper Silk Cloak. Oh, goodness. Whisper Silk. There we go. Now we've got Shroud. This one's difficult, right? You don't want to always cast this, but if you have like the 3 power already that you're looking for, this is going to be great. Where is it? Sorry, sometimes it uses really weird... Oh, right here. So sometimes it uses really, really weird arts that I'm not familiar with. Right? Shroud, that's all right. Right? You don't necessarily want Shroud all the time because then it's impossible to equip to your own creature. But if you're already at the, +3/+3 kind of engine that we're looking for, then this is a great include because it's really hard to get rid of Slicer at that point. You're going to need something like a board wipe, right? Which is going to be really, really difficult. Next up, we have Prowler's Helm. Prowler's Helm. There we go. I'm very good at typing, guys. We all know this. We've all seen this. Again, just more evasion. Cannot really be blocked. We have Cliff Haven Kite Sail. Another great one that we get to immediately attach it, right? For 1 mana. As soon as it gets, you attach it. And we have flying, which means it's really hard to block a flying robot that's going to hit you for 6 each time. And then 12 total because of that. And then that is all of our evasion that we have. Next up, we need to be drawing some cards. So it's not crazy, right? The kind of draw we have. We got just a few equipments that actually are going to help us draw some cards, right? And with that, we're starting with Rogue's Gloves. Now, the reason we love Rogue's Gloves is because anytime we deal combat damage to a player, which is going to trigger twice because of double strike, we get to draw a card. So essentially, we're drawing 6 cards every turn rotation. Isn't that crazy? The same thing applies with Zephyr Boots. The thing that's great about this is that, one, we get flying, so it's evasion, but also we get to loot every single time. So we're seeing around 6 cards as well. Isn't that amazing? I think so. Next is Infiltration Lens. We're crazy to think that we're not going to get blocked, so we got to make sure that when we do, we're drawing 2 cards. Again, same thing that's great about this is that it's basically 6 cards a turn rotation. You're drawing a whole new hand. Isn't that awesome? I think so. And of course, we've got Mask of Memory. This is the same thing. 6 cards, discarding 3 every turn rotation. That is a deal I'm willing to make every single time. Now, of course, we're going to have some dead cards every once in a while, so we need the normal just cantrips, right? Like Thrill of Possibility. We'll need something like Highway Robbery. This is always great. These are always some great cards. We got Big Score, which is going to net us some mana as well that we can use on other turns, or of course we can just use it that turn, and it's basically 2 mana at that point. We've got Faithless Looting, which is honestly, in my opinion, one of the worst draw spells in the game, because it's not one of the worst draw spells in the game. It's really good, but it's better when we need the graveyard, and in this case, we don't really need the graveyard, so oftentimes we're discarding something that's at least a little bit useful for our deck. So it's not amazing, but it is something. Next, we have Bitter Reunion. This is not really going to help us out with the list, but again, this is kitchen table. This is just something that I was able to see, and that can help us draw and discard a card. We already have haste, but we need this. We've got Seize the Spoils. This is the same thing as Big Score. It technically costs 2 mana. Costs 2 mana because we do get a treasure, which means we can, just stash that treasure away until we are done. I think we already have Thrill of Possibility, don't we? Yeah, we do. Okay, cool. And then lastly, we've got Memory Vessel. Cool. And it seems I might be missing a card, or maybe, am I really dumb? Okay, I do. I have 2 Thrill of Possibilities in here, people. Sorry, I have been cheating. I'm going to replace that immediately with a mountain. So we're just going to put another mountain here, and we're just going to ignore that. I've got my full deck list right in front of me, and so this Thrill of Possibility is actually a duplicate. We're going to make sure that doesn't happen again. So we've got 35 lands, we've got our commander, and of course, one more little look around of this deck. We've got plenty of ways to help ourselves draw some cards with our great equipments like Rogue's Glove, Mask of Memory, we've got Infiltration Lens. These are all great card draw pieces. We got ways to evade things with flying, can't be blocked, and has Shroud. We've got Hexproof in here. We've got Ward 2. We've got Trample. A lot of great things. The goal of the deck is to get Slicer out and make sure that Slicer is on a battlefield that he can thrive on, right? You want to be able to get rid of your opponent's creatures that are going to be potential blockers for Slicer. You got to make sure that you can attack with Slicer. And as long as you get Slicer to the point where, he's got roughly power 6, or not necessarily power 6, but he's able to deal 6 damage a swing, making it actually 12 due to his double strike. That's going to be the golden, little ratio that you're going to be in. You don't want him to have 5 power. You don't want to have +2 +0 or +2 +2, right? You really want to have at least +3 +0 or +3 +3 or +3 +2, whatever. Make it so that his power is 6. So we've got a lot of these doublers, right? And the, Inquisitor's Flail, right? We got Naginata, which is really great. It's going to give us 3 power. We got Two-Handed Axe, which is going to double our power. All these things, really great. We've got plenty of ways to generate mana so that we can play our really expensive sorceries to kill our opponent's creatures. It's just it's a really good deck. It's a really useful deck, and we're just trying to get Slicer to about 6 power, control the game, remove some creatures, play something like an Insurrection or a Hate Mirage, and be able to just kind of take the game from there. It's really fun. I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. Remember, the word of the day is taco. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys all next time.